And you have given yourself that script of all this journey. So, not only your forms are different, of course, all your forms are unique, but no one else are the same, but all the infinite little events and experiences that inform that journey. So it's from the ocean. A drop of water jumps out of the surface and flies in the air, like in a wave. The wave breaks and one drop of water jumps from the ocean and flies for a while and flies and returns, falls down again to the ocean. So first was the whole, after is the whole again, and in the meantime as a summa form. A form that is changing all the while is flying around before falling again into the ocean. That's the case. That's actually the case. We are the ocean, believing that we are that drop for a moment. A drop that is changing all the while because microscopically, if the drop flies for 2 seconds or 10 seconds, its structure, its atomic structure and molecular structure has changed all these 10 seconds, has become different every microsecond, right? It's not the same drop even while it's flying. It's a thought, a conception. That's the case now, right? Also, but doesn't matter the forms. It's informed by water, by the same consciousness that is its source, the ocean. So it's never other than the ocean. It's never other than consciousness itself. We are never other than consciousness itself. Assuming this apparent separate entity and doing this journey, going through this journey. To where? To just drop again into what we are. We have never stopped being it. Even while you fly in the air thinking I am so and so, if you want in different incarnations, first second of flying the water, the drop things, I am Cleopatra. The next second things, I am Marco Antonio. The next second things, I am Socrates. The next second things, another. So it assumes different names and forms. But during all this peripety or trip, one constant has been kept. The constant is the nature of that entity has only been consciousness, awareness. The same consciousness, awareness that is its source. That consciousness or that awareness has always been present, however the forms were of the drop. Was changing the forms, the drop. But has never changed its nature of being conscious. Because that's the nature of the ocean. Metaphorically speaking, of course. So we are in that trip, thinking I am so and so, I have decisions to take, where I move myself, where I want to land, here, there. Like if you could choose where you land, right? The drop of water says, I will extend my arms, then I can control, I can drop that in that wave. I like that wave. So it's ridiculous. It's a pretension, it's a fantasy. It's just a thought. Thinking that this is true. It's not true. All the trajectory of the drop, it is wholly scripted the moment it starts to jump out of the surface. The whole trajectory, it just follows the law. Just follows the law. The law of gravity, the law of inertia, the laws of movement. So there's no separateness, no identity separated, no entity. So where's the drop actually? Nowhere. There's just the movement of the totality. But in the metaphor, this moment of apparent separation, of not touching the ground, not touching the rest of the water, is what we call the arising of the thinking mind in offering its categories, right? The thinking mind presenting its concepts, its thoughts of this, that, and the other, of duality. So, for a moment, from the ground of being and from the ground of consciousness, an instance of this same consciousness being assumes a form and assumes the capacity to distinguish, to differentiate, to separate, which is thought. And that creates its own suffering, because, oh, I'm flying, I'm gonna hit hard, I'm gonna hurt myself or whatever. So it creates all kinds of fears and conflicts, because it can think, because it can divide reality into parts and pieces, and then something has to be afraid of something else, etc. That's the fantasy of thought, as I said before, when the reality is unbroken and unseparated, undivided. So that's the characteristics of the drop, flying. Capacity to think, to see itself separate, to see how I am separate. I have nothing to do with this body of water. I am another body of water, different. You see? It thinks of itself. Has assumed that form and it thinks of itself. I am another body of water. Yes, I am smaller, but I am myself. I am not this body of water called the ocean. I am just this drop. So it thinks that way, which is naive, or, because of thought, because of the capacity to project ideas and concepts, superimpose them to reality.